I mentioned before that my mother was from Plox Green in Minsterley. It's only about 20 kilometres from Montgomery in Powys or Wales, which itself is just only about a kilometre from the English border. Indeed, many miners of the Ladywell mine near Minsterley were from Montgomeryshire, as indeed was my grandfather. That is, he was a lead miner, not from Montgomeryshire. As a result, my mother was a regular visit to Montgomery, the main attraction being the robber's grave or Bedd y Lleidr. This was a tradition that she kept up with me as a child, and therefore the robber's grave has always been a source of fascination for me. Therefore I'm taking this opportunity to share it with you. Corner of St Nicholas's Churchyard at Montgomery is a space known as the Robber's Grave. There lies the remains of a young man, John Davies, who was hanged in 1821 at Montgomery for highway robbery. St Nicholas's Church itself dates back to 1226. The rood screen is original with the wonderfully carved 13th century angels. The screen, choir stall and misericords were all bought from nearby Cherbury Abbey. One of the interior highlights is the ornate tomb of Richard Herbert, died 1593. Herbert was the lord of Montgomery Castle and father of the poet and cleric George Herbert. Also buried here is Richard, 2nd Baron of Cherbury, who died in 1655 and was the last of the Herbert family to live at the castle. Montgomery grew up around the base of this castle, built high upon a crag, a vantage point controlling the River Severn crossing at Rhythmen Ford in the Vale of Montgomery. This was guarded through the millennia by Stone Age and Iron Age forts. The Romans built an important garrison near it. Following the Norman invasion, William the Conqueror rewarded his kinsman, Roger de Montgomery, for his loyalty with lands along the English-Welsh borders. Rogers was told of the importance of the fort and built a motte and bailey, timber and earth castle overlooking it. He named it after his home in northern France. During the Civil War in 1644, Lord Edward Herbert surrendered the castle to the parliamentary forces, resulting in the Battle of Montgomery, which took place in September on the plain to the north of the town. It was decisively won by the parliamentarians, even though they were greatly outnumbered. And in 1649, the castle was demolished by order of Cromwell. By the 1800s, Montgomery was a thriving market town, although now it appears to be little more than a village. A plaque on Broad Street tells us that in 1840 over 50 tradesmen were based in the town, including 2 blacksmiths, 5 bakers, 3 cobblers, 3 butchers, 3 carpenters, 3 coopers, 8 grocers, 2 seedmen, 4 drapers, 4 maltsters, 2 plumbers, 2 masons, 3 saddlers, 2 tailors, 1 bricklayer, 1 brazier, 1 timber merchant, 1 tanner, 1 currier, 1 clockmaker, 1 bookseller and 1 scrivener. John Davies, a plasterer from Wrexham, started working as a Gawas farm bailiff, locally for widow known as Mrs. Morris. Her husband had been called John, and her daughter Jane on their run-down farm in the area. John Davies was a quiet, taciturn individual, a few words, who kept himself to himself, but he was a strong and hard worker. It's also said that he was a grief-haunted man whose past was shrouded in mystery. Thanks to John Davies's hard work and dedication, he managed to turn the farm around so that it was making a profit once more, whilst also earning the affections of Jane. This had earned the resentment of rival farm owner Thomas Pearce, who sought to buy the farm cheaply, and jilted fiancé Robert Parker, a quarryman. It would seem that Pearce was not alone in wishing to buy the farm cheaply, and there were a number of creditors looking on anxiously. Whilst Parker had already fought with Davies one evening over Jane. Indeed, some say that Davies returned to the farm, Jane bathed his cut face, but would say nothing of how he became injured. Later, when a friend told the woman about the fight, she realised that Parker was a bully, and she would not marry him. She broke off the engagement, leaving Robert Parker a bitter man, intent on revenge. One evening, Pearce and Parker met in the tap room of a public house, and after several drinks they hatched a plan to get rid of John Davies for good. It would seem that Pearce and Parker's plan was to orchestrate a violent robbery and with evidence left behind to incriminate their mutual enemy. It took place on the road from Wrexham to Berwick when William Jones was assaulted, and a silver watch, some accounts say gold, and a small amount of money taken, although some accounts mention 6 guineas, which was not insignificant at the time, another that it was £4 and 12 shillings. In some versions, Pearce and Parker themselves committed the robbery. And working through the various stories, this actually appears to be the most likely. An alternative version is that it was Pearce himself who was allegedly robbed. Unaware of the manhunt, John Davies came to market. He was on busy Broad Street with buyers and sellers enjoying the banter of quick business. The lambs Davies had brought from the farm sold for a good price, and he went to the tavern to refresh himself before the long walk home, back to the farm. In one version, it's said that he met with Parker at the pub, who said, "Don't go. Come on, let us end our argument with a drink and behave like civil man." But who was later accompanied by Pearce. They lunged into Davies' pocket, pulling out the money and the watch. William Jones from Welshpool produced 2 witnesses, although not to the robbery, and appealed to them to find help, to find his assailants and finding the missing watch and money on Davies's person. Davies was accordingly committed to the autumn sessions, where he pleaded not guilty. He conducted his own defence and had not enough money to appoint a counsel. He was found guilty by the jury. If we follow the version that it was Pearce who was supposedly robbed, then when meeting in the pub, there were many witnesses to the event, making the evidence strong. But if we accept the more likely Jones version, Jones was from nearby Welshpool, and sorry I said that the Wrexham to Berwick road, and I meant the Welshpool to Berwick road, and therefore the witnesses were local, whilst William Davies was from the coalfields of Wrexham, an area whose inhabitants would have been distrusted by this farming community. At that time, highway robbery was one of the many crimes punishable by death. Hundreds gathered in the town to witness Davies's hanging on September the 6th, 1821. It's recorded that a storm had begun, and no sooner than a noose had been placed around the condemned man's neck, and thunder and lightning soon engulfed the town. At the place of the execution, people claim to have heard John Davies declare his innocence. The lightning is said to have illuminated the face of Davies, who had addressed the crowd by saying, "If I am innocent, the grass for 1 generation at least will not cover my grave." Now there are many versions of this, some much longer, but I've only given you the short one because I'm distrustful when I see so many different versions of what is sort of a critical part of the story. Rumours had soon spread of the dead man's final words, and some have come to believe him innocent. Such rumours of a curse being placed on Pearce and Parker had also taken flight in the following years. Following the death of Pearce in a blasting accident at the quarry, whilst Parker is said to have wasted away. This was buried in a portion of the churchyard where there had been no previous burials. As he has prophesied, no grass had grown on his grave for the next century. Some say that his prophecy was to last for a generation, others that it would last for a century. Although even today the site in the town St Nicholas's Church has bare patches and can still be seen today, 30 feet from the gate. Indeed, I recall visiting it as a child, and it was indeed bare of grass. In those days, it wasn't a wooden cross, but a stone headstone. But I believe that it was undermined, and there was no one to pay for its repair, so it's now just a wooden cross. And as I say, Parker died shortly afterwards, killed in a blasting accident in a quarry, whereas Pearce feared little better and died what was then known as a wasting disease. Now the area of Shropshire and Montgomeryshire is allegedly crisscrossed with ley lines, including one which goes straight through St Nicholas's Churchyard.